This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. The show's been a minute. Get on. Welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. It's Adam Carolla over here on the West Coast. On the East Coast, it's Mark Hardout. Garrigus calling from his New York offices.
I'm calling from the New York offices, and we ought to, how Bill Maher does overtime for his show? Mm-hmm. If we did before time for our show, people, I think, would get a laugh out of the 2 minutes before we go on air.
That's the stuff that's not fit for primetime. Speaking of primetime, I saw you on Jesse Waters last night.
Oh, my God. Talking about, I was on Jesse last night. In fact, we landed, and they had the mobile van literally like 50 yards from the airport. And so I just kind of ran out, got in the van, and talked about my favorite thing. And I know Gary wanted to start with something else, but I want to start with this. And I shouldn't laugh, and I preface this, it's a horrible fact situation. And I'm talking about the 6 people who died in was it Wisconsin?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the parade.
Christmas
and this
parade.
Guy, this is the pro per. He's going without a lawyer. This is the gentleman who was convicted today, wasn't he, Gary?
Yes, he was, of several different counts and life sentences on life sentences.
Okay, but this is what I need to tell people, and just press pause for 1 second while I set this up. Now I've tried hundreds of trials, and and I have talked with, I know most of the premier trial lawyers in America. And I will tell you that trials are some of the most stressful things. So your brain goes to weird places when you're in trial. And when I say weird places, you think about things. And one of the things that I've thought about, but I have apparently not damaged enough of my impulse control of the frontal cerebral cortex. One of the things I've always wanted to do is build a fort at counsel table so that it would block the judge's sight of me.
Yes.
And, when I'm just like, I'm so mad.
Yeah, I heard that sentiment echoed on the show last night. Yeah, she was having none of it. Mark, I know we're wading into dangerous waters here, but have you ever had a case where have you ever heard of a case where somebody represented themselves where it worked out?
Well, I will give you one, and it's recent. It's Avenatti, where he fired the lawyer in his California case, basically right at the beginning, and then got a mistrial. I mean, it ended up being a absolute disaster for him later on, but he did get a mistrial. And there's another case years ago where I was advising a guy, and the guy wanted me to represent him, and I just didn't want to get in the middle of it. He'd already picked a jury, but I advised the guy during the trial, and he got a hung jury. And I will tell you why. And I was talking to this about to Jesse Waters last night. Sometimes jurors, if you are the defendant and you're talking to them directly, sometimes you can connect with one or two. And I remember this case my father used to tell me about, where he was doing a trial. He was the prosecutor, and I think it was in Lancaster. And the defendant was pro per, meaning he represents himself. And the defendant's defense was that somebody had implanted some kind of a transistor or device in his face, in his teeth. And he could then hold up, this shows you how far back it goes, an AM FM transistor radio. And he could get orders from the radio. And he was listening to the orders, and that's why he did whatever crime it was he did. And my father thought, this poor guy, he's mentally challenged and blah, 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 and didn't really kind of engage that much with him. But the jury goes out. You know what the first question of the jurors were? Your Honor, can you send in an AM FM transistor radio? We want to test it out on the defendant. So sometimes, you can engage with jurors. Yeah. And by the way, the guy who had retained my office many years ago, I guided him through and explained to him and kind of guided him through how to do testimony versus a closing argument, things like that. And he got a hung jury. One or two jurors hung for him. So occasionally works out. It did not work out for this guy, but boy, he was Gary, do you have some of the other things? He took his shirt off in trial, or not in trial, but pre-trial. He was going crazy on this judge who has the patience of Job. It was quite a circus.
The shifting gears here.
Yes.
We've talked about cashless bail a few times. I think you're a proponent of it. A lot of folks now are campaigning against cashless bail. Just the other night in the gubernatorial debate in New York, I think Lee Zeldin on the Republican side was saying he wanted to get rid of it. Kathy Hochul was more of a fan of it. A lot of folks are claiming this is what's causing a lot of recidivism and street crime. But I hear cashless bail thrown around all the time. But I thought you're pretty uniquely qualified to give us the pros and the cons and the overall concept of cashless bail. Why do you like it if you still like it? Why are so many of these Republicans against it if they are? What is the argument, both sides?
Well, it's as is always the case when the government gets involved in something, cashless bail has become perverted. One of the arguments, and you'll remember I've been saying this to you for years, one of my arguments against cash bail has always been that all that does, and you'll remember if you go back in California, the biggest proponent of against cash bail was guess who? The insurance companies, because a bail bond is nothing but insurance, and the insurance companies make the premium off of the bail. I've always thought that bail in the traditional sense, where you have to post a bond and you forfeit the 10%, you pay a premium. So if you've got a $100,000 bail, back in the old days, you'd pay 10%. Then some of the insurance companies tried to make it 5 or 7%. They would get prosecuted for that. They would say it was unethical. Finally, the attorney general issued an opinion saying you can negotiate. It's like anything else, you can negotiate. But the problem was, why should somebody have to post a bond to an insurance company and forfeit that? So what I used to argue was, Judge, look, if the bail's $100,000, instead of me blowing $10,000 to a bail bondsman, and then the bail bondsman nothing but like a life insurance agent for the insurance company, let me put $10,000 cash up with the court. And the court would go, why? And I'd say, well, Judge, if you think my client is guilty and he gets convicted, you've got $10,000 and you can order restitution to the victim at that point out of the $10,000. If my client is not guilty, the case is dismissed, he gets his $10,000 back. That to me makes infinitely more sense than just blowing the $10,000 and having the insurance company get it. And I was able to convince some judges to do that. Now, that was my kind of beef with the bail system, that it was nothing more than just another insurance scam. So then you get to cashless bail. And how did that get perverted? Well, they eliminate basically the bail or the bail schedule, and they leave it up to the judges. And then the judges do these machinations, and you get somebody like Cain Velasquez, who Cain, in a no cash bail situation, the accused predator who is accused and stands arrested and accused and filed on for molesting his kid is out on zero bail. He's out, he's free. The judge says he can work. Got it. Cain, they make a finding that he's a danger. I don't know who he's a danger to. Maybe he's a danger to the predator. And then he doesn't get bail. That's how the system gets perverted. It makes absolutely no sense. And I don't understand when you get these people who are clearly a danger, how they get out, and somebody like Cain, who has lived a law-abiding life, does not get out. So that's the usual perversion, or that's what has happened.
Yeah, so you have some guy who went up and sucker punched an elderly Asian woman who was walking in Manhattan We don't want that guy back out because he's violent and impulsive and a threat to society at large. And
correct. And that should be, I mean, is that a hard calculation? I don't think that's a difficult calculation. Is he a flight risk? Well, he may not even know how to get back to the courthouse. So that's, but put that aside. Is he a danger? Yeah. If he's presumably sucker punching somebody and he's on videotape, there's, you could say, well, that's maybe the presumption of innocence has, at least to some degree, for purposes of bail, been rebutted.
So for the spirit of cashless bail, but against the execution of it.
And the execution, as with all things government, I shouldn't say all things government related, but it's typical. I mean, you take an idea. Why? I mean, this is what I understand. Why can't you force somebody to put up some cash? Why not? That if you think that I mean, the idea that I agree that you shouldn't have a disparate treatment of the wealthy versus the poor. But you can find out fairly easily whether somebody has resources or not, and you can tailor the bail to whether they have resources. And generally, it should be just a function of, are they going to show up to court? If you have a doubt as to whether they're going to flee, I remember there's a guy on trial here in New York as I'm talking, Thomas Barak, who was Trump's buddy, who is accused of being an unregistered agent for the United Arab Emirates. I don't remember what his bail was, but it was some astronomical amount. But he's out on bail because the idea is he's got connections to the Middle East. He's going to flee. Well, he's never going to flee. In fact, he's not only, I mean, it was just kind of, I think, silly because he's here not only in trial, he actually took the stand in his own defense. Why would this guy flee? I mean, the number of people who flee, if you ever took a real kind of statistical analysis, is not that many. In fact, they tend to flee more, I'm going to bet, if you had a statistical analysis, in the current system where you don't take into account dangerously.
Gary's
$250 million on bail.
$250 million.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, as if Tom Barak, how old is he? 75 years old?
So if you get a bondsman to put up $25 million, right, for that, then does the bondsman always pocket the full amount of the 10%?
Bondsman is basically an agent for the insurance company. The lion's share of the money goes to the insurance company.
Wow.
If you put up a bond. Now, federal court has got a better system in many ways because federal court will let you sign. They'll have you sign, or they'll have friends of yours sign, or friends of yours who have property can sign. I've always thought that system makes more sense. The state court is just not as sophisticated in most cases as the federal system for bail.
What's your take on the new Weinstein strategy of his lawyer explaining that you may not like the old Hollywood system, but it was a system that everyone engaged in, and that's just how it worked. He didn't rape anyone. They were trying to get parts, and that's why they went up to his hotel room.
So I know everybody involved, as you know, in the Weinstein defense. I mean, when he was in New York, his first lawyer was Ben Brofman, who Tenney works for. And Ben was the one who pioneered this by saying it was the casting couch. We're now basically criminalizing the casting couch. Mark Worksman, who I know very well, I've tried many cases with Mark, who's defending him now in LA, has said it was transactional. Before Me Too, this was all transactional. One of the things that Mark said, and I thought of you, Adam, was, one of the purported victims, AKA complaining witnesses in the LA case, are you aware of this, is Gavin Newsom's wife. Did you know this?
Otherwise known as California's first partner or something. Yeah. Because we can't call anyone whatever they were.
Worksman said if she wasn't the governor's wife, she'd be just another bimbo who was trying to make it in Hollywood. And he got excoriated for that. But he's as somebody who's been around and it's not a false statement. In fact, it hews closer.
Danced around that one for a while.
Well, it hews closer to the truth than some of the prosecutorial theories. Some of these prosecutorial theories on these cases are so frustrating because they take the stance. The prosecutor will say, I'll hear a lawyer say, or like Worksman will argue, why did if he raped Gavin's wife, then why did she go to him for advice? She literally, after the supposed rape, went to Harvey Weinstein to consult on advice for how to deal with Gavin Newsom's scandal when Gavin was bing bang bonging the wife of his subordinate. And what's the prosecutor's response? Well, who are you to know how somebody's supposed to act after they rape? Really? Or there's
this is I hate to cut you off, but I'll let you gather your thoughts there for a second. This is an offshoot of an argument that I've always made that could win any case, Mark, and I'll give you this one for free. If you're ever in charge or you've ever been paid to defend one of these hot blonde Florida teachers who was accused of having sex with an underage student, it sounds bizarre, but it's a little bit of the same argument, which is, I just put the kid up on the stand. I'd go, you're traumatized, yes, and your teenage years were destroyed, yes, and this is something that you're going to have to get settled in years of therapy, yes. It's just a quick question. Remember, you're under oath. You ever beat off to this alleged crime? You are under oath. And if in fact you beat off to it, and then the other guy would yell, you don't know how people express grief. They'd go, it's true. But I think when someone's carjacked or pistol whipped or robbed at an ATM, I don't think they go home and beat off to the event that they were alleged victim of. And this is a little bit of the same argument, which is, if this wasn't consensual and it was a dramatic rape, then why are we you had it with what's his name, the news anchor who got busted, where he took advantage of his underling at work, Matt Lauer. But then, she stalked him and put notes in his mailbox. Like, we are living in a place where you're not allowed to point that out, but it's pretty germane to me. It would be as a juror, after this alleged incident, her reaching out for advice. That wouldn't be neither here nor there.
Advice on a sex scandal. I can't think of anything that is more relevant and more probative. That's the analysis. Probative to whether or not she was traumatized. And don't tell me that's irrelevant and who are you to decide how somebody's supposed to react? Because if you take that theory, then don't put up an expert who's going to testify as to how people react.
Yes, because now no one is an expert, because there's no way to vet how someone would act after being raped, because it's evidently every possibility is now in play. So,
right. I mean, basically, the cross-examination of the expert is, well, give me an example of what isn't consistent with being raped. That's what I want to know. Give me some subset of facts or emotions or reactions that isn't consistent. Because if you still are engaging with the person, that's consistent, because I've heard that testimony. If you're not engaging because you're traumatized, that's consistent. And if there's any range in between, that's consistent. Well, then you've just defined the entire universe of reactions, and you've obliterated the reason for the expertise in the testimony.
Yeah, no, you're 1,000% right. On one spectrum is, I never want to see that person again. On the other spectrum is, we dated for another 6 years and had 2 kids, and everything falls in between those two. So then there are no more experts.
So there is no more experts. There is no, why even have a trial? I mean, just summarily take the person out. When I used to ask jurors, you want to give them a fair trial, or is it like Texas where we'll give them a fair trial and then take them out back and shoot them?
So the lawyer, which I heard about this a couple of days ago, and I thought, as distasteful as it is for many people, strategically it's smart because instead of arguing over whether they had sex or not, you turn it into the casting couch, and then you take everyone he had sex with and said it was transactional.
It's exactly right. And by the way, the worksman who's trying this case, and AJ, who's trying it with him, Alan Jackson, are both very good lawyers. I've gone up against Alan on the Japanese OJ case, and Worksman I tried a couple of federal trials with years ago in the organized crime section, and they're both very good. They're very effective, and they know how to try a case. I mean, Judge Almeida, who was presiding over this case, you may remember, is the same judge that I tried that case where she excluded or she granted the motion of the prosecution to not have me refer to Gloria Allred as the lawyer for the complaining witness, who was the transgender, who was supposedly the so-called victim in my case. Yes. And I laughingly said to Judge Almeida, yeah, that's fine, but how are you going to keep Gloria out of the courtroom? And sure enough, Gloria came following in the transgender, and I looked at the jury, and we looked at her, and everybody had a knowing glance. They knew exactly what was happening.
The transgender who slashed your clients in front of the Sizzler on Santa Monica,
and then proceeded running down the street. And apparently, if somebody slashes you and they're transgender, God forbid if you go to try to apprehend them, that's a hate crime.
I don't want to veer off, but did the Japanese OJ, was that the guy who fled?
Yeah. So his wife was killed in Little Tokyo. He didn't really flee. He left after the investigation, went back. He was subsequently
to Japan.
To Japan, right. He was subsequently tried there for the crime and acquitted. And then to the poor guy, the DA's office said he was taunting them. And I forget where he went, but I think it was Guam. And he was gone for years. There was a warrant out for him. And then he stepped foot in Guam, and not realizing it was an American jurisdiction, or at least had the ability to extradite him. And I ended up getting the murder case dismissed on double jeopardy, but they extradited him. Alan was very clever. He added a conspiracy to commit murder. So we had to have a hearing, and he got extradited. And unfortunately, supposedly, he committed suicide in LAPD custody within 48 hours of getting there.
I remember that. So now back to, you have, what do we got, Gary? I got another thing for you that I wrote down, Mark. Somebody tweeted, and it's fresh off of John F. Kennedy Jr., who was in here not too long ago. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
John F. Kennedy Jr. is on the the QAnon ticket.
That'd be a get.
He's at the bottom of the sea. But the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. came in here loaded for bear on what these vaxes were doing to people, especially young boys, myocarditis and the like. And somebody tweeted, I saw somebody tweeted the other day that any school board that forced kids to go, young men to get vaxxed, before they go back to school, they're going to get sued one of these days. And already the Supreme Court in New York said that, the workers, the firemen, the policemen, and all the federal or all the governmental employees you guys laid off, you have to take them back and you have to pay them back pay. This thing is kind of turning around big time.
I will tell you, 15 minutes, I changed out of my suit and tie. 15 minutes before this started, I was in a settlement conference regarding these issues. And to say that it is turned, I don't want to talk about what was said in the conference, but I will tell you that the tide has turned immensely. I've got one of these cases. I've got what my client was originally getting sued for, and we sued back. It's been a reversal of fortune like you would not believe. And you're right, the New York Supreme Court just issued an order. And mind you, people are starting to understand the insanity that we went through, and that in California we still go through because we're still under an emergency order. But it's the idea of this vax misinformation and the idea of the crazy hewing to these unelected health authorities. We've started to, it's starting to turn. I mean, you can feel it. And I will tell you, I'm in the courts dealing with this. I'm still litigating these cases. There's been a monumental change.
Do you assume that there's going to be a like Camp Lejeune or do you have mesothelioma? Am I going to start seeing commercials every 10 minutes for law firms that represent people who went to Camp Lejeune from 1967 to 1992 or worked in the shipbuilding industry and have mesothelioma? Are we going to see a year and a half from now, are we going to start seeing commercials for like, were you forced to be vaxxed? Were you forced to be vaxxed through threat of losing your job or not being able to return to your college campus? Is this going to turn into a cottage industry?
It potentially, but that's one of the reasons, the pharmaceutical companies are unbelievable. I've told you this before, but I'll reiterate it for somebody who was listening. I tried 14 years ago a case against Pfizer. In fact, it was one of my probably 10 largest verdicts. It was 59 or 60 million bucks, and it was supposed to be tripled. The judge took it away. But I cross-examined the chief medical officer of Pfizer, and I cross-examined the Pfizer executives, and I was stunned. I mean, people were getting killed by their product, and they were calling it adverse events. I was just telling somebody that, these adverse events. And I would ask the question, you mean you killed him? And the guy, it was unbelievable. And so they're smart enough to know that they're not going to rush a vax without getting immunity, which is what they got. They got immunity. And I would have told you 2 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, Camp Lejeune, I remember that because we, in the community of trial lawyers, you talk about these things, and we saw it coming. We never, it didn't look like it was going to happen, but it did. And I think you may see the pendulum swing is coming, that all it will take kind of reminds me of powder cocaine in California. When it was crack cocaine and it was limited to the African-American community and the lower echelons of the economic stratosphere, we were beating the crap out of that community. It was felonies. You're going to state prison. Well, when powder cocaine got to a place like Long Beach and white communities, all of a sudden we inoculate them we have diversion. So the kids get diverted so they don't have felony things. When you start seeing people or young boys dropping dead of heart ailments mysteriously, you're going to have a lot of people asking a lot of hard questions. And you've already started to see, reminds me of the other kind of segues into the other thing. One of the things you've been talking about this entire time was the schools, right? You've been talking
and just to make sure everyone's good with the analogy as it pertains to crack cocaine and powdered cocaine, when Nana in the nursing home dies, maybe, we don't really give a shit. But when the 15-year-old white boy who's the captain of the lacrosse team dies, people are going to start getting outraged. They're going to lawyer up and they're going to ask questions. Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly right. I mean, you're going to get that. And that it works across the spectrum here, because we reacted so crazy with the schools, for instance. And how many times did you and I talk about for years, and Drew, about what are they doing? This doesn't affect this COVID does not affect in any meaningful way healthy kids in this age group, and we're shutting down schools. And remember the argument? I mean, let's transport back then.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sat 2 feet from me an hour ago and said there's certain studies, maybe out of Germany, I can't recall, but they have found 0 young men who have died of COVID without comorbidities. They've been no healthy. It was, went from it started off as not as many as old people, and then it went to, well, here's how many, but minus the comorbidity, the answer's 0.
And guess what we did? Gary's got the statistic. So we shut down schools, and let's not even talk about the psychological. Let's just hear Gary do it.
It is the first time schools administered this test in 3 years. A superintendent in New Jersey tells NBC News students aren't taking any steps forward right now at all.
You talk to many of my teachers and they'll tell you their kids are learning things over that they should have learned 2 years ago.
The problem really is coast to coast, not red states or blue states, but everywhere. Marty West, now academic dean and professor at Harvard Graduate School of Education, also importantly a member of the governing board that oversees the national test. Marty, thanks so much. Was there a difference in performance between areas that reopened schools versus those that continued remote learning?
Oh, wait, pause.
If you look across all 50 states.
Wait until you hear this answer, Adam.
Yeah. By the way, you can pause it for a second. I will say this before I hear this answer. And I'll file this under, Grandpa knew what he was doing. You don't need a scholastic expert to say, what if you took kids and you sat them home for 2 years versus attending school? How would they fare? Well, we've got to check that. No, everyone already knows the answer. If you got mono and you're out for 2 weeks, you would fall behind. This is everyone getting a 2-year version of mono, at least in California. But all right, Shepard.
If you look across all 50 states, you see a weak relationship where you did
see that weak relationship. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Didn't he just say there was no relationship?
Right.
Jesus.
Please.
Relationship where you did see that states where schools opened up earlier did lose a bit less ground. But I think focusing too much on that would be a distraction from the real message in these results, which is that scores are down almost everywhere.
Yeah, we don't want to be distracted.
We don't want to be distracted by how, your mono thing is so right. I mean, I remember my senior year, I got mono and I was out, and it cost me the difference between valedictorian and salutatorian just for 3 weeks. I mean, that was it. Not to mention the fact that my doctor's son took my starting position on the basketball team. But other than that,
I was praying for mono. But I first things first. If remote learning doesn't slow down the kids' scholastic growth, then what are we doing with schools in the first fucking place? Like, why doesn't everyone just stay home? We'll save a bundle of money. We'll turn those places into CarMaxes. Why are we doing this?
Why don't they do a testing on Call of Duty aptitude and whether that?
Oh, that's through the roof. All right, let me do a spot, and then we'll get back into this. Do you own? Do you rent? Well, sure you do, one or the other, and you work hard, and that's where Geico comes in. Geico makes it easy to bundle your policies. Geico is it's the way you take your homeowners or renters insurance along with your auto policy, and you bundle it up, and you save a lot of money. It's a good thing, too, because you already have so much to do around the house. So go to geico.com and see just how easy it is to get your bundle working. Get a quote and see just how much you can save at geico.com. So, yes, we're now in the phase of this where all who made a mistake need to apologize, and then we can turn the page. I'm tired of the part where, you explain everything was sort of equally distributed and there was no difference between Florida and California, and it may have had an impact, but let's not, the refrain I keep hearing is, look, the kids were impacted. Let's not live in the past. Let's focus on the task at hand.
Listen to last week's episode. Never apologize.
Right. So are there going to be lawsuits?
Disingenuous, though. The idea that you preface, and I like Shepard Smith, but the idea that you preface the piece with there was no difference, red state, blue state, or whatever, and then you ask the guy, and the one clip you use is, well, there was a relationship, but that's a distraction. Well, right. Wait a second. I want to know, what is the relationship? Why don't we talk about that?
Agreed. All right, last subject. What do you got? Because Gary had a full menu. Carrie Lake. Yes.
Yeah, Carrie Lake. I mean, look, you can disagree with her as I do on many of her social positions, but this is, you got to give her, no matter which end of the spectrum is, you can view her as the devil's spawn, but this woman knows what she's doing when it comes to messaging.
Well, by the way, you can also find the clip about the debate.
Yeah, I've got that ready. It's on our list.
That's another person who knows.
Why don't we check out Carrie first, and then we'll check out her competition right after.
Okay.
I think that'll play well.
I'm actually shocked you asked that question.
Well, actually, I have to give you a tough one once in a while.
I did a little, actually, Anthony, how old are you?
20.
Are you a journalist?
No.
Well, you did better research than half these people. Let's talk about election deniers. Here's 150 examples of Democrats denying election results. Oh, wow, look at this. This is from Joe Biden's press secretary. Reminder, Brian Kemp stole the gubernatorial election from Georgians and Stacey Abrams. Democrats saying that. Is that an election denier? Oh, look at this. Just heard Republican Ryan Costello said it would be difficult for Stacey Abrams to win because she lost her state bid, but yet she's still claiming she never lost. This is outright. Hillary Clinton. Trump is an illegitimate president. Is she an election denier? This one says, was the 2016 election legitimate? It now definitely is a question worth asking. That's the Los Angeles Times. So it's okay for Democrats to question elections, but it's not okay for Republicans. It's a crock of BS. Every one of you knows it. We have our freedom of speech, and we're not going to relinquish it to a bunch of fake news propagandists. If you want a copy of these, I'm sure that Anthony would help you get a copy and help you learn how to be journalists, but look it up. It's been happening for a long time. Since 2000, people have questioned the legitimacy of our elections. And all we're asking is that in the future, we don't have that have to happen anymore. When I'm governor, we're going to make sure we have honest elections. We want the Democrats, the Independents, and the Republicans to all know that their vote counted. We want fair, honest, and transparent elections, and we're going to deliver that for the people. But just remember, guys, this is one page after Hillary Clinton says George W. Bush was selected president, not elected. So let's start, if you're going to start throwing around terms like election denier, let's remember who the other election deniers were. Hillary Clinton and all the Democrats. Next question.
There you go.
So when people, sometimes they tweet at me, what are you a right winger? No. But by the way, I can identify a cogent argument that if we were trying to, and rhetoric in the true sense of the word, she is persuasive, she is dynamic, and you may hate her for the political positions, but she's effective, and give her due.
The person that she's running against, Katie Hobbs, does not want to debate her, and she is making the rounds. She's on... She's this ABC, and she's being asked. It's a sad testimonial of where we are. She's a very progressive Democrat, Katie Hobbs, and she goes on ABC, and they're asking her some toughish questions, which is, why aren't you debating? And I'm sitting there going, and so as many other people who think like me, I'm thinking, even her own side is calling her out on something. But we shouldn't think that way. we shouldn't think of ABC News as her side, because everyone watch it is surprised. Like, her own people are asking tough questions. Her own people, will do like a CBS, her ABC, New York Times, Los Angeles. Her own people are. When did the Los Angeles? Carrie Lake said she cited Democrats, and she was citing very public Democrats like Hillary Clinton, and at some point she cites the Los Angeles Times. Well, why is the Los Angeles Times a Democrat?
Well,
they're a newspaper.
Yeah, they're a newspaper who's single-handedly trying to take down Los Angeles. I've never seen anything like it.
But it's
LA Times basically saying we're going to destroy the city, and by the way, we're going to wave goodbye as we move to El Segundo.
The funny part is I think of just how I process it. Like, her own side. It's like, what do you mean her own side? It's just ABC News, or at least it used to be ABC News. All right, here's ABC News asking Carrie Lake's opponent, why no debate?
Why not challenge her, though, in a public forum? I'm just curious.
As far as I'm concerned, the debate about debates is over. I'm running my campaign the way I'm running my campaign. I'm going to continue to make the case directly to voters.
The case you make to them, and not to belabor that point, is they are tough times for a lot of folks. We talk about the economy, inflation, and I know there's a rising cost of living here. People are putting somebody in that office that they want to stand up for them and fight for them. At worst, it could come off as you're scared to step on that stage. And at best, you're not willing to confront. We're in a new era where sometimes some politicians are seen as bullies. And we've been taught since we were little kids, you got to stand up to a bully. You understand how that might come across. How do you make a case? We want to send you to fight for us, but you won't even step on stage with it.
I have stood up to this bully for the past 2 years, and Arizonans have seen that, and I'm going to continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
I want to talk about.
So this would be like one of my mom's friends when I was in high school debating Ben Shapiro. It would be annihilation. And so she doesn't want to go up there and be annihilated. By the way, yes.
How about a follow-up question? And I love, what's her name, the female reporter there from ABC. But what about a follow-up question is, who determined that the debate about debates is over? Didn't we just last night have debates in Pennsylvania for the senatorial race and other jurisdictions as well? Where is who wrote that the debate time to debate about debates was over yesterday? What's so magical about October 26th?
She's talking about her debate is over. She's done with her debating.
I have the expiration date on the debate to debate was October 26th. That was it.
Well, she also, in another answer, and I won't make Gary look for it, but she explained that she's not debating her opponent, Carrie Lake, because Carrie Lake is not experienced enough, which is the argument you would make if you wanted to debate her, is her inexperience, in which case you would just mop the floor with her. Look, I don't know where you guys are at, but we've talked about these props. And in the past, I've went, look, whoever I see the most commercials for, I'll just vote against. I'll go the other direction because I'll assume they have a war chest and it's being funded by somebody who's not a friend of mine. And I'll just go the opposite of whatever the big prop is that I'm being hit over the head with, which is talking about Indians, but it really has to do with, gambling on Raiders games. But in the debate, my de facto mode, if you said there's two candidates, I don't know much about them, tell me about it. If you said one of them doesn't want to debate the other one, I'd say, well, then I'll vote for the one who wants to debate. That would be my de facto setting.
Well, this is how, the question, they kind of danced around it. They started to get at it was when they asked her, was you're supposed to stand up to bullies. By the way, obviously the implication is Carrie Lake's a bully because she forcefully makes a case. I don't know that that's a bully. I always thought that was somebody who's trying to be persuasive and make a case. But let's assume that's a bully. But why do you just get off the hook with this idea that how are you supposed to represent and fight for people if you're afraid to have a debate over words or ideas or rhetoric. I don't understand that. Maybe I'm biased because rhetoric and persuasion is what I do for a living, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, part of what you want with somebody who's a politician, you're electing somebody who can articulate the positions that you believe in, right? Isn't that what you're doing?
100%, and a good note to go out on. I'm going to be in San Diego this weekend at Mic Drop Comedy. I'm doing live pods there and do stand-up there as well. And then Vegas, Wise Guys on stage with Carrot Top. That's coming up, I guess, the 2nd, Gary, of November at Wise Guys. I have a couple comedians up there on stage with me. You go to adamcarolla.com for all the live show info. What do you got, Mark?
Well, I'm here in New York. If you're at near Grand Central Terminal, come say hi to Jake at Dirty Taco or Tay at Prova Pizza. And if you're in Palm Springs, go by Gigi's. Just celebrated our 1-year anniversary. And if you're in downtown LA, 10E for Mediterranean Tapas or Engine Company 28 downtown and at LAX.
So, till next time, Mark for Adam Carolla, sorry for Mark Hard Out Garagos. I got tangled up in your handle. Saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.